Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic out there. Very happy new year to all of you. Thank you so much for all of your happy new year wishes that I've received both via the Mentour Aviation app, the Facebook page and here on YouTube. My year so far have been very interesting. I have flown a full week, 1 day out of Barcelona and 3 days out of my base here in Girona, and all sort of things have been happening. So if you just stay tuned, I will give you a little bit of a rundown of what happened to me during this week. Right, guys, so before we start, as always, guys, if you have any questions that you really want me to answer, then use the super chat function here. That's the little dollar symbol. If you press that, you will be paying a little bit, but I do guarantee that I will try to give you the best answer I can possibly give you if you use that function. Otherwise, you have the Mentour Aviation app. As you can see, there's already people that are sending me messages. Just tag @mentor, and that will send me a message in the app, and I will try to answer that as well. And then I'm going to, of course, take questions here from the YouTube chat as well. So once again, guys, I hope you're doing absolutely great. Let's see who's here. We have Kieran, Tadek Sarna, and let's see, there's loads of people that's popping up. It's great to see. Elvis Fly, authorized. RS Aviation, good to see you here. RS is one of those people that I've seen in here for almost every one of my live streams, and I do recognize you guys. I do recognize the messages that you're sending, your usernames and stuff, and I do appreciate it. Every time that you interact with the channel, every time that you give me a like on one of my videos, it does help the channel quite a lot, so I do appreciate it, and RS is one of those. Right, so I promised you that I was going to talk a little bit about what happened to me during the week. All right, it's been one of those weeks where everything strange that could happen happens. All right, it started off with my first day in Barcelona. I came up there, and I was sleeping in a hotel before because have been working on earlys. Came out to the aircraft, had a really great crew. We had a great briefing, and we did something called I did something called a fuel uplift check. This is something we do on every single one of our turnarounds, where I calculate how much fuel that we need. Right, so we've decided on, let's say that we need 6 tons on board. Okay, then I see how much fuel the previous captain had when he or she arrived with the aircraft. I calculate how much fuel uplift I should have. So let's say that the previous captain landed with 3 tons. I want 6 tons, means that I'm going to uplift 3 tons. All right. I use the standard specific gravity for the fuel, which is 0.79 normally, and I calculate how many liters it should be. Okay, and then I do my walk around. And then I get, when the fueling is completed, I get the fuel receipt, and I compare the fuel uplift to the fuel uplift that I have calculated to make sure that, you know, that there's no discrepancies. And the tolerance that I have there is 200 kilos. All right. So if I've calculated that we need, let's say, 4,800 liters, or 4,800 kilos, and it turns out that it's 5,050 kilos on board, well, then there's something wrong. Right, something is not right, and we have to verify where the fault is. So this is exactly what happened to me. Right, I got the fuel receipt, I checked the fuel check, and it was more than 200 kilos out. So the first thing you do then is you go down and you verify that the specific gravity of the fuel is that 0.79, because sometimes when it's cold out, the specific gravity is higher, and when it's really warm it might be a little bit lower, and of course to get inside of those 200 kilos, that might be the difference. So I did a proper check, we got the specific gravity from the fueler, and it turned out that the fault actually got bigger then. So then I know something is off here. So the problem is that the only thing you can do then is that you have to get the engineers involved. They have to verify how much fuel we have on board to make sure that there's not something wrong with us, that the problem is in the fuel truck. Okay, that's what we're trying to find, because sometimes the counting meter inside of the fuel truck is not correct. But you have to do this, and the reason that this is so important to do is because there was an accident many years back. I think it was an ATR over the Mediterranean who'd had some work done on their fuel counting meters inside of the tanks, and they uplifted the fuel. They didn't do this cross-check. They flew out, and it turned out that the engineers, by mistake, had put a fuel meter that was designed for a different aircraft inside of that aircraft. Okay, and they had way too little fuel on board, and they ended up running out of fuel and actually crashing into the sea. So after that, we always have to do this fuel check to make sure that there's nothing wrong. This is once again one of those, you know, one of those extra checks that we pilots do every single day on every single flight that you guys might not be aware of, but is really, really important to do. Now, after about half an hour of talking to engineering and checking and doing, what it turned out had happened was that the engineering department during the night had done a turbine cleaning of the engine. So they go down, part of their recurrent maintenance checks, they clean the turbines, okay? And as part of doing that, they also run the engine for a while to make sure that everything's working properly and there's no gases, nothing, stuff like that. But when they do that, they should also do a check. Or actually, they should just write in the tech log that we have been running the engine, it has used this much fuel. Because if not, then what happened to me happens, right? There's a fuel discrepancy. And that's what happened. The engineer forgot to put that into the tech log. He did put everything else, that they've done the turbine cleaning, all of that, but the fuel use was not recorded. Hence, the fuel check didn't work, hence the delay. Right, and that then followed me throughout the day, almost an hour and a half delay at the end of the day. So it just goes to show, first of all, I was really happy that, you know, that I caught the problem, because it did indicate that something was wrong, and then we figured out what it was and everything was fine. But it's one of those things that just very rarely happens, and since we have really tight turnarounds, it just goes on and it just rolls throughout the day, with passengers being delayed at every single one of the turnarounds after that. So that was on Monday, and then that continued on Tuesday. While my being delayed means that I was out of hours for the day I was supposed to do the day after, so I couldn't do the first two sectors, and then it just rolled on from there on. So as you can see, like the smallest thing can have repercussions in this industry, and it's quite interesting to see when they do happen. Alright, so we have had the first couple of questions coming up on the super chat here. First of all, Craft Play Games, thank you very much for supporting. If you had a question that didn't register here in the super chat, so just contact me on Facebook and I will answer your question for you. Mani Ramachandran, thank you very much. Hi, corporate guy again. Out of every 10 flights, how many do you do without ILS? I'd say maybe we do 10% without the ILS. All right, like the last day I flew on Friday actually, I flew 2 flights. Out of both was non-precision approaches. I did 1 VOR, actually 2 VOR approaches, because the ILS was either not working or I was flying into a runway where there was no ILS installed. So we do them quite often, but this differs highly between different airlines. Some airlines, they only fly to major airports. Now, major airports always have ILSs. And when you have an ILS available, you use the ILS because it's the most safe and most exact way of doing an approach. But if there is no ILS, or if they turned off the ILS because of maintenance, well, then you do a non-precision approach. It's not a big deal. It requires a little bit more briefing and a little bit more vigilance because of the slightly lower accuracy. But that's it. Right, guys, so let's see. I'll take some questions then from the Mentour Aviation app. Make sure that you've downloaded the app, by the way. There's more and more people in there every single day, and I see sometimes I don't have time to get in there, during a day, and I go in and I can see just loads and loads of people have been discussing things, and it's everything from which flight school you can use to how to gain hours to, what you should be thinking about when you're looking at new flight schools and what headset to buy. It's loads of stuff being discussed inside of the chat, and of course you have all of the playlists as well, where you can learn how to fly a Cat 3 approach, for example, or how to set up the 737 from dark and cold. Loads of those things. So let's see. We'll take some questions then from the chat. So, what is a yaw damper? Great video topic from Luddekudde. Yaw damper is basically helping. A yaw damper is a mechanism that affects the rudder. Okay, it moves the rudder for us, and it stops something called a Dutch roll movement, which is a slightly pilot-induced roll movement that happens It's very hard to counteract at higher Mach numbers that you're flying at higher altitudes. You can get kind of a roll thing going with the aircraft, which from a human perspective, it's so subtle that it's almost impossible to counteract. So instead we have a stall management yaw damper computer that detects it and just inputs a little bit of rudder all the time in order to keep Dutch roll from happening. All right. If you just Google Dutch roll, you will see what it is. Now, the yaw damper on the 737 also has an extra function, which is it coordinates the turn. So if you have been doing your training, your PPL training, for example, you know the first couple of flights is just turns in straight and level flight, or in not straight and level, but level flight, turn in level flight, and you know that you are going to have to input a little bit of rudder as you are turning in order for the aircraft to be perfectly coordinated. When you turn, you both put aileron into, so you start turning with aileron, and as you're turning with aileron, you also have to push rudder towards the side you're turning in order for the turn to be coordinated. Now, in the 737, we don't have to do that. The yaw damper does that for us. So we basically just turn the yoke, and the yaw damper does that work. Okay, so those are the two main functions of the yaw damper on the 737. Gamer FTV 184, thank you very much in the super chat. So, was your flight school in Västerås? It was. Västerås is a town just a little bit to the west of Stockholm. It had the Flyggymnasium, which is a upper secondary school government-sponsored program that you could get into. I could get into. It's really hard to get into though. It only had 30 spots a year when I was applying for it, but it did pay for my training, and I will probably most likely soon do a new video on that. Okay, because I have done a video about how I became a pilot, or actually a series of videos about that, but they were made long ago before I had proper equipment and audio equipment and stuff like that. I would probably redo that very soon and give you a little bit more details and a bit more insight to my own flight training and how I became a pilot. But yeah, the answer to your question is yes, I did my training in Västerås. Okay, I'll take some questions also. Let's see, there's more stuff coming up in the Mentour Aviation chat here. Why isn't the yaw damper on all the time then? It is all the time. We never switch off the yaw damper. The only time the yaw damper comes off is if we have a hydraulic failure. Okay. So, Riggy, what is the assumed error on takeoff weight calculations from using average passenger weights? And could this have an effect? No, we don't. We have the standard passenger weights that we're using. It has been shown over time to accurately reflect the weight of the passengers. Some of them are going to be lighter, some of them are going to be heavier, but seen over time, it is accurate. Okay, there is no, we don't have a margin of error or anything like that. We just calculate on this, and it seems to be working fine. Now, these standard weights are being continuously monitored. So if there's a tendency over the years for people to become heavier, for example, well then the standard weights are going to be updated. But for us, the flight crew, we only get the weights through our load sheet and through our weight and balance documents, and we use them. We never, calculate on it. There are quite a lot of performance, of extra performance calculated already in the figures that we are using. So no, the answer to the question is it's not really a problem. Right. So, is aerospace engineering a good degree to study for becoming a pilot? Maybe the first of a year of stuff helps you with ATPL, but still the other years it's just maths, and maths. Yeah. No. So a degree is going to be helpful. Aerospace engineering degree is going to give you a much better sense and understanding about the aviation world and such. Is it going to give you a huge advantage when you're applying for a job? Probably not. All right. It will be seen as an advantage, the fact that you've managed to do a degree like that and show that you can apply yourself to the kind of heavy training that it brings with it. But it's not like they're going to put you at the top of the pile just because you're having an aerospace engineering degree. So generally speaking, I can't speak for everyone now, but what I would like you to do is, if you're let's say that you're in the States, okay, and you want to become a pilot, you should be going into the airlines that you want to join, like what your favorite airlines are, the ones that you are aiming for when you're doing your training. You should be checking out their recruitment pages. They have web pages. That's exactly what you need in order to apply, and see what kind of degree that you need. All right, that's the degree that you should have. And generally speaking, they tend to just ask for a degree. Okay, a degree in something. And that is just to kind of cut off the big part of the pile of people applying, so that they can get it down to a manageable pile of people that they know can get through quite tough theoretical training. Because doing a degree, no matter what the degree is an indication that you have dedicated yourself and you have the capacity to dedicate yourself. And then they take from that whoever they think should come for the interview. So what degree you do, less important of how good you do in your degree, because it's likely that once they have decided that you have a degree that they want to have a look at you, they were probably going to see how well you did in that degree. So grades tend to be just like your ATPL theory. And this is also something that I'm getting some questions about lately, how important it is with first time passes in ATPL subject. And I can tell you that it is important. All right. Once again, airlines tend to have, especially for the first job, when they're taking in cadets with low hours, they will have a stack that is from top to ceiling with people applying. Thousands of people with the required licenses applying. And they have to narrow that down to a manageable pile. And the way they do that, in some airlines, I'm not saying all airlines, but some airlines, they will first only take the ones that have first time passes in all their ATPL subjects for exactly the same reason. They will be looking at that as, okay, so these guys have shown that under pressure they can give good results, so just take them. And then, if they still need people, they will start taking from people who maybe did not have first-time passes and stuff like that. But yes, it is important that you apply yourself to whatever it is. If it's a degree or if it's your ATPL exams, it's better to take a little bit of extra time. All right, not maybe get all of your exams into, well, all but half of the exams in one go and then half of the exams in another go, in order to finish as quickly as possible and then fail one or two exams. It's better to kind of slow it down a little bit, maybe take 2 or 3 subjects less if it's possible, and take a third time doing all of the exams. I'm saying if this is possible, if your school allows you to do this, and make sure that you get good results and first time passes in your ATPL exams. All right, try to do that if you can. Cool, more questions then. So guys, I'm getting loads and loads of questions here now. There's almost 370 people watching. So if you have any questions that you really want me to ask, make sure that you use the super chat as well. That is also what is funding these these live streams away from my wife, who's sitting here, wanting me to come and join the rest of the family. Alexei. Is it always necessary to press toga button during takeoff go around, or can you just increase and set thrust manually? The toga button tends to be connected to your flight directors. Okay, so not only will it activate the auto throttle toga function, it will also activate your flight director guidance for the go around. So in our case, yes, it is absolutely mandatory to both press toga in go and takeoff and in go around, because without it, in the 737, for example, let's say that you come down to minima and you want to do a go around and you have not pressed toga, well then the flight director, the autopilot flight director system does not know that you want to do a go around, and it's going to continue to give you flight director guidance for landing. All right, it's going to continue to follow the glide slope even though you've crossed the minima. So when you press toga, that is then going to activate the go around mode, which will then give you whatever go around climb rate that the reduced go-around tends to give you, okay? About 1,000 to 2,000 feet per minute climb normally, and then it's going to get you retracting the flaps. So, yes, you have to press toga. That's the simple answer to that. Samuel May, thank you very much, Samuel. When you put in the wind into the descent page in the FMC, which flight levels do you use? I usually get 5 flight levels, but don't know which to put in. All right, so if you think about why you put the descent winch into the FMC, now for those of you who doesn't know what this is, basically the VNAV path is calculated. So I'm going to start all over again. The aircraft is calculating the best way, the most economical way for the aircraft to descend from top of descent, which is at your cruising level, down to the runway. And it wants to try to do that with as much idle thrust as possible. So basically it wants to fly and then close the thrust and then fly idle down to the beginning of the approach, where you will subsequently need a little bit of thrust during the approach. All right, that's what it's trying to achieve. The more information you feed into the FMC, the more accurate that will be. So when you want to feed things like descent wind in, because if you have a lot of headwind, well, then it can wait longer at cruise level before it can start descending. If you have a lot of tailwind, it's going to have to start descending earlier because of energy management. All right, and this becomes more and more important the closer you get to the runway, which means that if you have five different winds during the descent that you have available to you, and in the FMC you can only enter 3, at least in the 737, then you tend to enter the lower ones. So for example, me or us in our company, we enter flight level 310, flight level 200 and flight level 100 winds. Right? Those are the 3 flight levels that we put in order to get the descent angle and the descent path as accurate as possible. So Samuel, I hope that answers your question and why. Good, let's take some questions from the actual chat here as well. I see there's more and more people joining in. That's great, everyone that's here that I haven't said hello to. Happy New Year! And if you're new to the channel, very welcome to the Mentour Pilot channel. I hope that you're liking the content. I know that the first video of the year was a little bit lower quality than the videos that I've done previously, but that was just because I've actually been away. All right, I've been with my family in Sweden. We've been building snow castles and doing all of those Christmassy stuff that you should be doing with the kids. So I haven't had time to film more. But now I have. I have 2 fresh episodes coming up. On Thursday, it's a slightly longer episode that I'm hoping that you are going to like. And I also have some really, really awesome stuff that I'm hoping that my company will allow me to release. And I have to check that with them first. So I'm not going to tell you what that is. Question, have you ever flown to Vilnius? I have flown to Vilnius, but it was a long time since I did that now, unfortunately. I like flying into to Vilnius. It's a nice airport to fly into. There's loads of questions about, let's see, RS Aviation. Make sure to download this Mentour Aviation app. Thank you, RS. So RS once again is pushing and helping to push the app. Make sure that you have the app, guys. The more people we have in there, the more fun it becomes. So get it. There will be more stuff being uploaded into the app as soon as I get access to a simulator. But right now already you can see how to fly TCAS maneuvers, Cat 3 approaches and go-arounds, full setups, engine failure after takeoff, how to use the checklist, and on top of the actual 360 videos that can show you all of it, both what I do and what my first officer does, you also have briefing videos that will explain what it is you're seeing. So the way that I've intended for you guys to do this, to learn the most out of it, is to see the briefing video first and then watch the 360 video, because then you can appreciate what each and everything that we do actually is. So that's the way that I've thought about you using the instructional videos inside of the app. Tony Brandao, thank you very much in the super chat. How do turbulence mitigation system works? Which aircraft have them? Turbulence mitigation. Well, I mean, all of the aircraft that are flying now, the larger commercial aircraft, will have some turbulence mitigation as part of the yaw damper system and the autopilot system, of course. I don't really know what you're referring to as a turbulence mitigation system, because they're all like the autopilot is taking care of maintaining the altitude and speeds through the auto throttle system and the altitude hold feature. But if you have questions, I don't know exactly. I haven't heard the term turbulence mitigation system before. So if that's a specific system, then feel free to contact me through my Facebook page, or indeed, just if you go into the Mentour Aviation app and you use the supply feedback feature. In setting, there's a send feedback feature. That sends an email to me. So if you send that in, I will see if there's something I can find about it. Okay. Because I haven't heard that exact term being used before. Have you ever flown to Gothenburg, Landvetter or Säve? I've been to both of them. Säve was interesting. It had a fairly steep non-position approach that we used to fly, and it's fairly short as well. Landvetter is a beautiful airport. nice big Swedish airport. Now obviously I always love flying home to Sweden if I can. How do pilots know what kind of approach they're going to fly? That's a good question, actually. So first of all, what we do in the morning is that we have our approach plates for the airports that we're going into. Okay, so we check through the approach plates. We check what kind of winds we're expecting. Now those winds are going to give an indication of what runway is going to be in use. And then we look at the approach rates for that runway. If there's an ILS, that is likely going to be the type of approach we're going to use. And then we look through the node times to make sure that all of the approach rates are working, because sometimes there is an ILS available, but they're doing maintenance on it, or it has been broken, or something has happened. So then the node times will tell us that the ILS for runway 08 right is in up. Then we can assume that it's going to be the next available approach rate system, which tends to be a VOR or an RNAV approach. Okay, and then when we're actually airborne, then when we get about 140 miles or so away from our destination, we tend to be able to pick up the ATIS, and the ATIS for each airport is going to tell us what approach type is in use, which runway is in use, and what approach type is in use. And if that's not the case, we can call either the approach or call the operational frequency we're on and ask them to check what approach we can expect in the airport. Right, because it is important, because if we spend 10 minutes briefing one approach and it turns out to be the other, we're going to have to rebrief that during descent, and we really do not want to brief during descent, because in descent we should be focusing on the other stuff. We should be focusing on making sure that we are getting, descending the aircraft correctly, that we have enough distance available to get the aircraft down and decelerate and things like that. So it's a sterile phase of flight. We should avoid briefing if we can. What was the cost of your training, including all? Yeah, in my case, like I said, I was extremely lucky. I got into a government-sponsored program, so the cost of my training was basically just my living expenses. The Swedish state paid for the rest of it. So in my case, it was very low, all right? But I know that that's not the norm. Most people pay between 50,000 up to maybe 150,000 for the training. There's a lot of money. So that's why it's so important that you guys take your time to find the correct school for you, the school that you are going to feel good with, but also look around, because you might get the same kind of training quality if you just look at some neighboring countries and stuff, and you might save tens of thousands of euros. There are huge differences in the cost of training. So look through it thoroughly. Do research, ask previous students, check what kind of, how many people from that school have gotten job recently and things like that. Very important things to look at. Young Aviators, thank you very much in the super chat. Great to have you here. Hi Petter, would you prefer to have paper or electronic checklists? I know Airbus have electronic checklists. Do you want Boeing to have them? And do you think they are useful? Well, I have only used paper checklists myself. I like the idea of electronic check, especially emergency checklists, okay? Because the electronic Airbus checklist, they will tell you what to do and in what order. So it eliminates the risk of looking into the wrong checklist. And also, once you've done something, that step disappears. So it also stops you from skipping points. So an electronic checklist, providing that it is designed in the correct way and that it actually works, is great, okay? But since I haven't actually tried them myself, I'm only basing this on the little knowledge I have of the Airbus, then I can't really say whether or not I want it. I think it worked quite well, but we do have, especially in training, there's quite a lot of emphasis put on just getting people to read checklists correctly, find the correct checklist, not skipping steps. So the paper checklist is 70s technology, and I'm sure with the technology that we have available for us today, there are better ways of doing that, right? The 737 does not have it, unfortunately, but it's a great question from Young Aviators. Thank you. Right, so people are continuing to ask about a collaboration between Captain Joe and me, and I would love to, all right? Captain Joe, we have been speaking about it. It is likely to happen, but like Captain Joe said in his first ever live stream, he has to concentrate right now on finding a job. All right, what's most important for him is to get his wings back and start flying. So the work on his YouTube channel and the work on collaborating with me and other YouTubers is going to be secondary to him finding a good employer. Once he's found a good employer and everything is settled down, then I'm sure that we will have a chance to battle out a little bit about different things, and I'm looking forward to that as well, because I do really enjoy the material that he's putting out. Right, while I am doing more of emphasis on things like soft skills, like how you should be interacting with other pilots, what you should be thinking about, and more how to think about this job. Right, what's going in the mind, what's going on in the minds of the pilots. He is much better than me on doing technical podcast, explaining systems, explaining theoretical stuff. That is his strength. While my strength is more soft skills. So I think that we will we will complement each other quite well. If we do a podcast together, it will be really, really fun to see. So we'll see what happens. But I can't promise anything, but I am hoping, and I know he is hoping, that we can do something cool further down the line. Doug Pauly. Doug, good to see you. Doug is another one of my trusted followers here on the channel. Doug is almost always here in the chat. I've seen him inside of the app as well, I believe. So it's great to have you here, Doug. I do really appreciate every one of you guys, of the ones who've been here from the beginning, so to say. So Doug is saying, I listened to ATC during the Turkish attempted coup. Pilots were left without info or instructions, also during 9/11. Are you worried about potential political interference during a flight, and do you have procedures for if ATC is unavailable or similar? Yes, we do have procedures for that. Okay, first of all, there are set procedures in case of loss of comm, and if you can't get a hold of an air traffic control unit, you have to assume that it's loss of comm, and we revert to the loss of comm procedures. Loss of comm procedures differ slightly between different countries and different TMAs as well, but the international ones tells us what to do. Okay, so we just follow those, and then we take our Jeppesen or Navtech manual up, and we check if there's any specifics. So if I'm going into London, for example, and we lose all radio contact, then I will follow the international loss of comm procedures, which is basically just continuing for a set number of seconds if we're on a radar heading, then resume the resume the flight plan route we had, fly on the flight plan route until our initial approach fix, enter holding, and then start the approach into the airport at our estimated approach time, more or less, with some. But we also then, of course, have to squawk the 7600. Okay, so there are rules like that to follow, and then obviously, like I said, we check what's specific in London TMA, because there might be some differences inside of specific, especially big TMAs, right? When it comes to other political interference, no, I couldn't say that I am very worried about that, because I'm flying in Europe. Europe is fairly politically stable, so it very rarely happens. But you never know. And in the case of 9/11, for example, if there's a terrorist attack, you can be sure that there's going to be some extreme measures made. Most likely, the aircraft in the air are just going to be diverted to the closest available safe airport. And then it's just follow the working ATC instructions, right? It's just like, okay, so we're going to divert. Are we going to go there? Yes, we'll go there. We can also discuss with other aircraft in flight. If we wouldn't have any kind of guidance, there's always a possibility to talk in between each other, even though that is an extreme measure, which I haven't even heard of. But you can always, you have to be able to think outside of the box. If something happens that you haven't seen before, you are there, you and your crew is there to figure it out. And there is always a way to figure these things out safely. Okay? So that would answer your question, Doug. I hope you're happy with that. If you're not, then obviously you just contact me afterwards and we can discuss it further. Thank you very much for your generous contribution to the channel. It's really appreciated. So, Biviat Halig 1. What do pilots need to do in order to fly on another type of aircraft? How long will it take to start flying on a Boeing 777 after Boeing 737 and to become a captain? We assume that the pilot's already a captain. Great question. So, those are divided into two different parts. So, the one thing, as in how long will it take for me to be able to fly on 777, that's easy. It will take about 2 months in the simulator. And do some theoretical training first, some technical exams, stuff like that. Then I will go into a simulator together with another person who is doing the type rating. We will do the type rating, which tends to be a couple of sessions in a fixed-based simulator to learn procedures, and then maybe 10 or 12 sessions in a full flight simulator where we learn all of the different systems to feel how the aircraft is responding, how we fly it, and how to deal with all system malfunctions. And then at the end of that, there's going to be a skill test where an examiner, like me, examines if I have the required knowledge and skill. Once that is done, then the type rating is done, then I need to do a base training, which is at least 6 touch and go landings in the real aircraft. So I go out in an empty aircraft without any passengers, together with a type line training captain, and probably a lot of other people that are doing the type rating as well, and we will do 6 touch and go landings each in the 777, and after that I will have it in my license that I can fly the 777. Right, so that's the procedure to get it. That will take between 2 to 3 months normally to be type rated. And then after that there might be some line training which is specific for the airline that I'm going into. So the whole procedure, if I would to go now to an airline that requires me to fly the 777, I would guess that it will probably take about 6 months from me starting in that airline until I am released online. Something like that, okay? Now, for the question of how long it would take me to become a captain again, that would be highly depending on the airline. Okay, so for example, Emirates. All right, Emirates have been taking direct entry captains a couple of times. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Direct entry captain means that if I will go there and I would do the assessment and I will go through their test system and their interviews and I would be able to be successful on each of those steps, which is really tough, very few people do. Then I could go from being a captain on the 737 in my current airline to be a captain on the 777 in Emirates. Okay? That is possible, but that is because Emirates have decided that they are going to take direct entry captains. Right. Most airlines, especially the older flag carriers, do not take direct entry captains because that bypasses people who have been standing in line. There might be first officers in that airline who have, who are waiting for their command, who have the hours, and then a direct entry captain comes in and takes their slot. That is not, from a union point of view, it is not, it is frowned upon, right? They normally don't use that. So in that case, if I would go to, let's say, British Airways, it is likely that I would leave my captain's position here. I would go there. I would start as a first officer, lowest seniority, just like starting all over again. And then I would have to work up the seniority list until it's my turn to get a command, which might happen in 10 years, depending on, how much they're expanding and so on. And then there are differences in there. There might be some airlines who are taking in pilot into fast track positions, which is probably, to be perfectly honest, I think is probably the smartest way of doing it. That is to take someone who has been a captain on a 737, for example, but hasn't flown long haul, put them in the first officer position for maybe 6 months or a year to learn the ropes, to learn the operation, because it is very different. Flying short, medium haul is very different from flying long haul. You need to know some other stuff that we don't use in short, medium haul. So they would then do a fast track. So after those 6 months, for example, they would do their command training and then get a command. That is a fast track, and that is available in some airlines as well. So as you can see, there's no straight answer. There's no like, this is how long it takes. It depends on which airline you're going, under which circumstances you're doing it. Man, I am speaking a lot today, guys. Right, there's loads of great questions, by the way. Each one of these questions probably warrant a new video. So, keep sending in your questions. I know I say that every time. And make sure that you're subscribing. Yeah, as well. If you haven't subscribed already, or you have friends, maybe in flight school, something who doesn't know about the channels, make sure that they subscribe as well. Because I'm using all of the feedback that you're getting me, all of the Facebook questions that I'm getting, like, oh, how does this work, and what is that, and why do you call that a flight level, and stuff like that. I use all of that to do videos, right? To feed, because I know then that this is something that people are interested in knowing. So whenever I get a set of questions that are similar, I think, maybe there's something here to do a video. So thank you very much for all of you guys who've been sending in that. What happens when one of the windscreen wipers doesn't work? Great question. You might actually get grounded because of that. It depends on what kind of weather you're flying into. I had it the other day. One of the windscreen wipers in front of me just stopped. Right, I managed to, on the ground obviously, once we had stopped, because I didn't need it for the landing and taxiing. Actually, it happened during taxi. So we taxied in, stopped, and I just, went out through the window and just pushed it a little bit, and it moved into place. It just got stuck basically on some patch on the window that didn't glide well, and then it worked perfectly after that. But if not, and if we're going into rainy weather, you might actually get stuck with that until an engineer gets to fix it, because it would mean that potentially one of the pilots doesn't have visibility, which is just not okay. All right, so it's a small thing that can still wound you sitting on the ground. Can a pilot have ADHD? This is, I'm getting loads of questions about OCD, about ADHD, and I am not an aeromedical examiner. I cannot give you advice on medical issues. You need to contact a flight doctor, an aeromedical examiner, or an aeromedical center. All right, I did a video about these things, so go in and have a look at the video where I actually interviewed an aeromedical examiner, and the guidance that I remember that he gave from that was that A, you cannot be on any kind of medication, right? You cannot be on ADHD medication or psychopharmaca of any sort, and you cannot have had that the last 6 months before you do your medical exam. And also, when you've had something like that, it's likely that the aeromedical center that's going to issue your first class 1, they will want to talk to whoever your doctor has been, to verify that whatever was a problem before is not a problem anymore, what it has been looking like. But it is not an absolute no-go. Right? It can be treated, as long as it's gone and it's treated and you don't need any medication, then it is possible to do it, but it's likely that they are going to have they're going to want to check through it to make sure that there's nothing there for them to worry about. Right, cool guys, so let's see if we get something on the Mentour Aviation chat then. What would you do if someone in the ATC offended you? And who would you report it to? Right, it's very unlikely that air traffic control would ever be rude, as in offending rude. They might be short and they might tell you off. Okay, those are different things. So if someone had been rude to me, as in haven't done their job properly, have been unprofessional, then yes, I would report it. I would do an ASR, a safety report, outlining what happened exactly, not my own feelings about it or anything like that, just what I did, what they did, what frequency it happened, what time it happened, okay? And that would be then sent in to the aviation authorities, and they would have to contact the ATC unit. In some cases, when something happens the other way around, you might have heard about this actually. Some people, let's say that you're a PPL student and you're out in the circuit and you do some kind of mistake. In some cases, air traffic control will ask you to contact them after landing. So they will give you a telephone number and say, listen, okay, once you've taxied in, I want you to call me on this number. And the pilot have to write it down and then call them. And then the air traffic control is going to give the feedback directly to them, saying that, listen, what you did there, that you entered the control zone without any clearance or wherever it might be, is not okay. You need to get your shit together, basically. So that might happen, but from a pilot side, it's very rare. So we are confined to asking ourselves, was there a safety issue here? And if there was, that has to be reported so that it doesn't happen again, right? If it was just a personal thing and that guy or girl had a bad day, well then you just suck it up. You do not speak back, right? There is no bickering on the frequency. There should never be any snap on the frequency. No, all right? Not okay. The frequency has to be clear. So if someone is acting unprofessional, you are still professional. This goes for everything. Everything. If you're in a cockpit together with a captain who is unprofessional, who is swearing, screaming, or acting in a bad way, you still have to be professional. This is one of the hardest parts of being a pilot. It's when you're flying with someone that you don't really get along with, and they are doing stuff that they shouldn't be. You have to constantly ask yourself, does this have safety implications? In that case, you have to put your foot down and stop it. Or if it's just something that annoys you, you just have to bite your tongue, continue, fly the aircraft safely, get the aircraft down the ground to the gate safely, and then you talk to them. Then you say, listen, right, that what just happened is not okay. I do not accept it. I do not appreciate you talking to me that way. And in some cases, I've actually heard of first officers offloading themselves. Just calling operations, say, I cannot operate with this guy safely, I will not fly the next leg and operate. Obviously, that is then going to have to be followed probably by a meeting with the base captain or with headquarters to see what actually happened. Not something I recommend, but if you cannot get along with someone, if you feel that CRM is actually a threat, then this is something that you can do. And it has happened, okay? It sends a really, really strong signal. But as always, guys, what you have to think about is safety and safety only. Safety first. If you think that safety is in any way compromised, you have to speak up and then you have to do something about it. Okay, I cannot overemphasize that. Can you suggest any good universities to start my pilot career? No. The thing is that I have up until now been very careful with recommending any kind of schools or universities for the single reason that I don't really know about them. All right, I can recommend my old flight school, Scandinavian Aviation Academy, to a certain extent because A, I did my training there myself, so I know what kind of training they have, and B, I know some of the people working there, and I've been in cooperation with them and have done some stuff with them very lately. So in that case, I can actually go out and say, listen, you can go here and it will cost this and it'll be worth your while. We can trust them. But I cannot go out and do that with random schools that I haven't been to or haven't interviewed because that would only be hearsay. I would only be saying stuff that I've heard, secondary information or tertiary information for someone else. And I don't want people to go out there and say, well, I was watching Mentour Pilot, he told me to do this and I went there and then they went bankrupt. No. It's not. So that's why I keep, unless I've been to the flight school, checked them out, they have invited me and I've been there and I've been looking at, what they do, done interviews and stuff like that, and talking to previous students, then I could potentially say something. But otherwise, I'm going to keep it very, very clear. You have to do the research. You have to do the legwork needed in order to find out if a school is good or not. All right? It's as easy as that. How do pilots know that they have to start to turn in, for example, the localizer? Well, that is a function of your ground speed, how much you're closing in and how far away from the airport you are. All right. So if you're far out, you can wait a little bit longer with lining in. If you're closer in, you're going to need to maybe start it a little bit earlier. This is something that you will learn with the aircraft that you fly with. And then, if you're flying an aircraft like the 737, for example, it will tell you that you should be turning now. The flight directors will be starting to move. Even if the localizer has not been captured yet, it will go into a localizer capture mode, which will start turning you when you feel like, oh, this dude is just flying straight towards the center line without any indication of turning. Then the flight director will start turning you in because the flight directors are smart. But when you're doing your instrument rating, you will be learning all about this. Young aviators, think 787 or Airbus 350. Well, I'm going to have to say the Boeing 787 there. Like I've been flying Boeing for 16 years. I'm going to say the 787. However, once again, I haven't flown any of them. And from what I've seen, the 787 and the 350 are pretty similar. As in, they are very cool, extremely advanced, very futuristic aircrafts that are using the latest technology to be as efficient, environmentally friendly, and good to the pilots as possible. So I am guessing that I would be happy flying whichever one of those aircraft that I would be allowed to fly. As my son coming in, he's probably thinking that I'm doing this live stream a little bit too long. Jason Ellingson on the super chat. Thank you very much, Jason. I've had several friends encourage me to become a corporate airliner pilot. 350 hours PPL with the instrument rating. At 45 years, am I too late to make a career change? I worry I won't earn enough. I make very good money as I do. Well, I mean, obviously that is a question that you are going to have to answer. 45 is, I mean, if you already have some of the ratings and you know how much it will cost to get you the rest, then you can make a calculation on how much, if this is actually an economical, smart thing to do. Okay, if you're earning good money now, I don't know what that is to you, then yes, then it might be a less than smart move to make. Wait a little bit. Yes, son. Okay, jag ska komma och hjälpa till det snart. Yes, right, so getting back to that was my youngest son, William, by the way, wanted some help with this Wii game. Yeah, so you're going to have to think, is this important to me personally? I think that you can get a job at 45. You might, if you're in the States, for example, it might mean that you have to go in through the regionals, which are not paying very well, and you are going to have to enter at the lowest kind of first officer level and then work your way up. Now, that might take some years. And let's say that you want to finish by between 60 and 65, it means you have 15 years, probably a year or so before your training is done, and maybe another year before you find a job. So you have 13, 14 years or so to work. So it's perfectly doable. Like, there is a career there. You can get yourself from a first officer to a captain within the time that you still have available. All right? But you have to make the calculation whether or not doing your passion, which is to fly, is worth the dip in income that you're going to have before it starts rising again. So I cannot tell you what to do. It is likely that you will not earn as much, seen as a lifetime career, as it is if you just stay where you are. But then again, do you need to stay where you are? Do you actually need the money you're earning now? How is your family situation? Have your kids left college? Stuff like that. And if the answer to that is actually, me and my wife, we can live with a little bit less money, and she's happy with the kind of lifestyle change that this would mean, well, then go for it. You know, you only live once. You have one life, one time to do this right. Okay, and if you feel like you're stuck somewhere where you don't like to be and you want to be somewhere else, well, these are the kind of considerations that you have to take, but they are not to be taken lightly. All right, you have to make a series of educated decisions. You cannot just go by your heart. You have to go with your brain, especially if other people are involved, like your family, your wife, your kids, stuff like that. All right, I hope that answers your question. What is flying in congested airspace like around London? It's fun. All right, it can be very congested. You have to make sure that you keep to the speed restrictions that you're given, that you're listening out, that you're sharp on the RT, because they have no time with people fooling around or asking several times about the same clearance. So you have to really be switched on and sharp. But that's what we pilots live for. This is what we like doing. So flying in London TMA, I think is fun most of the time. The air traffic controllers are absolutely brilliant. All right. I haven't flown around JFK or around Los Angeles, where I know that there's also very busy airspaces. In other parts of the world, it's also busy. But by far, the best air traffic controllers that I have ever come across in Europe are the ones that are sitting in the London TMA. All right, they are absolutely brilliant. They can be speaking, like I've been speaking now, continuously for 10 minutes. I don't know exactly how long their shifts are allowed to be, but they can be speaking non-stop, giving clearance after clearance after clearance after clearance. You can't even get in on the frequency. If I'm getting a frequency change over to, for example, Gatwick approach, which tends to be insane, I might want to try to get in, as in I'm waiting for a radio silence so that I can go in, but it's not going to happen, right? It's just one clearance after the other until they call me. So they will be speedbird 152, turn left heading 350 degrees, descend 2,000 feet. get the answer to that. And then Shamrock 165, turn right, heading 135 degrees. You are cleared for the localizer. Runway 04 right, continue, and then it continues like that until they call my call sign. Mentor 360. Are you on frequency? Yes. And then they will give my clearance off to me. That's how it works. It's cool. It's very nice, right? So, Rich Murrow. Hi Petter, after seeing video on the Toronto collision, have you ever had to deal with evacuation? Seems it's complete chaos. Do you assist cabin crew? Guys, if you want to see how we do an evacuation, how we train to do an evacuation, then I suggest that you get the Mentour Aviation app, okay, and you get the rejected takeoff and emergency evacuation collection. Right, I've done it for specifically this reason, so to show you guys how we act in the case of an evacuation. But the things that I can say is this, right? An evacuation will lead to damages. It will lead to people getting hurt. So an evacuation is not something we do lightly. It's not something that we decide, all right, this feels a bit iffy, let's evacuate just to be sure. No. An evacuation, we know that people will break their legs. Some people might die because, you know, they get tumbled on top of each other or they fall off a wing or something like that. So we do an evacuation when we think that that is the safest course of action. When we want people out of the aircraft, for example, during a fire, right? When we want to make sure that people need to get out before this fire gets worse. Then we evacuate. Okay, and the way that we do evacuate is we, in the cockpit, we concentrate on our cockpit commands. All right, what to do, make sure that we do everything in the right order. We, you know, open the outflow valve, make sure that all the doors can open. We shut the engines down, make sure the engines are shut down. We make sure that the flaps are down to 40 so that the people who are going out on the wings have something to slide down on when they are evacuating. We're doing this from the Curate checklist, by the way. We're not doing it from memory, we're doing it point by point from the Curate checklist to make sure everything is in the right order. Then once everything is done, we initiate the evacuation for the cabin crew. The cabin crew is trained to get people out through the emergency exits that are available. So if there's a fire on one wing, they're not going to use that. They're going to use all the other available exits. They are going to be reaching people out. They're going to use what's called able-bodied people, able-bodied passengers, ABPs, to help with, for example, people in wheelchairs and to help opening the doors if they cannot themselves. So they've chosen that in beforehand if they are pre-warned about it. So that happens if there is an emergency in flight, for example, that might lead to an evacuation. Then they would have pre-briefed ABPs. If not, they are dealing with this. So we, the flight crew, we do not have anything to do with evacuation from the aircraft. However, when we evacuate, we have to help with evacuation outside. Okay, so once we are out of the aircraft, we should be gathering up the passengers, making sure they get away from the aircraft and stuff like that. Now, there is this old saying about the captain should leave the aircraft last, or the ship last. That is not actually the case anymore. All right, the captain and flight crew, once their duties are done, they should leave the aircraft either via the normal emergency exit or via the windows with their emergency straps, if they can. Okay, but there are still captains that would wait behind to make sure that everyone is off, like Captain Sully Sullenberger did in the Miracle on the Hudson, for example. So it's always going to be up to the captain's prerogative what he or she elects to do on the day. But this is what we're being told to do. And then outside of the aircraft, once we're outside, I'm not actually the captain anymore. I'm not responsible because the aircraft has been evacuated. So I will assist and I will be a point of reference until the fire chief comes. And the fire chief becomes then the one who's in charge of the evacuation scene. But what's really, really important, and something that we always brief and include, is that we make sure that we have the load sheet with us. The load sheet will tell us how many passengers on board, how many children are on board, stuff like that. And it's critical for the fire chief to know that we have gotten everyone off, so that they don't need to send in firefighters to look for people in the cabin. If they know they have 156 passengers and there are 156 passengers gathered at the gathering point, well, then there's no need to risk the lives of any firemen going into the aircraft. They can just try to put the fire out from outside. So that's what we do in evacuation. And once again, if you want to see how this is actually done, how the evacuation actually looks, then get the Mentour Aviation app and get the rejected takeoff and emergency evacuation collection. Right? It costs, I think, $2 to get the whole thing, or $1.99, and it will give you both the briefing of what we do and I will show you how we do it. Right, Jordan Cole, thank you very, very much for your contribution. If you had a question, it didn't register, go into my Facebook page, send me a private message, and I will answer your question there. Young aviators, thanks again. Do you want your children to become pilots? I want my children to become whatever they want to be. If they want to be carpenters, that's what they're going to be. If they want to be electricians or ballerinas, that's what they are going to be. I'm going to support them in whatever it is they want to do. Okay, so that's what I want for my children. At the moment, they want to be pilots, but they're like 5 and 8 years old, so they just want to be whatever their dad is, I suspect. Right, I'm just going to take the last question now before I have to go, because I think there's people waiting for me. Lucas, do you want to come in and say hello to everyone?
Hello.
Yeah, he's a star from my previous video, the one who was making funny faces in my previous video. This is Lucas, and I'm going to go out and help him and my other son to fix his computer game in a second. So I'm just going to take this last question from Jordan Coles. If a first officer goes sick at short notice and the replacement is a captain, then which captain will be in charge? Great question. This actually, I told you in the beginning of the show that I was telling you about my week. This actually happened to me. All right, my third day flying, my first officer got really ill. Right, he was with me. We were doing the briefing, and he suddenly just got pale and really, really ill. Okay, I don't know exactly what happened, but he could not fly, so he had to offload himself. Now, the replacement was the first officer, but if it's a captain, then the company decide who is going to be the commander, and we will see that by the way that our voyage reports are set. Okay, so the commander tends to be the one who is a trainer or a type rating examiner, sometimes, or it can be based on seniority. But what we actually do is that if we fly 2 captains, we tend to just shift. So I will be sitting in the left. I will be sitting in the left for the first flight, and then we switch over. The other guy or girl will be sitting in the left, and then we switch like that. Or since I'm a trainer, I'm used to flying in the right-hand side. Well, in that case, I will be sitting in the right side for the whole day. You know, and the normal captain who might not be a trainer will be sitting in the left, where he or she is most comfortable. That's how we're going to do it. But it's only going to be one commander. It's only going to be one, and that is the company who decides that. Right, guys, as you can see, my family now wants me to join them. It's been an absolutely fantastic live stream. I'm so happy that you guys are following me during the new year. Thanks again for all your support, and for all of you who have been helping here in the Super Chat. If you guys want to take part in my Patreon crew, the ones who are helping me previewing my videos, there will be a new preview video very soon coming out. Well, in that case, go down, there's a link here in the description of the video to my Patreon crew. The only thing you need to do is click that, check what the conditions are, decide if you want to support or not, and then do it. Okay, I do really, really appreciate all of the members of my my Patreon crew. They do a wonderful job, and so do all of you guys who take your time to sit here and watch me doing these live streams. Have a fantastic day, everybody. See you in the app. I'm going to go over to the app now and answer some questions. Take care of yourselves, and make sure that you check out the video that's coming on Thursday. Bye-bye.